All right. Today we have Jessica Neal for Kentucky State Senate. She's going to talk about her experience. And Jessica, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, that would be great.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, guys. My name's Jessica Neal, for those of you who haven't heard of me. I recently ran for State Senate in District 24, which encompasses Campbell, Pendleton, and Bracken counties as a whole, and then a tiny part of Kenton County. I have been kind of getting involved in politics a lot over the past several years. And then especially during COVID, and just kind of seeing like the gross overreach of our government into our lives, I realized it was time to do a little bit more and get more involved that way. So I never really considered running for office. And then the opportunity presented itself, and I realized this was an opportunity for me to really get involved and kind of do what I could to help our community and our Commonwealth.
And Jessica, who were the other candidates for Kentucky State Senate in District 24?
Sure. The other two candidates were Shelley Funky Fromeyer and Chris Robinson.
And what was the result in that race?
The result had Shelley winning by about 307 votes.
That's it?
Yes. It was a very close race. I don't have the totals directly in front of me in terms of her vote count. She was a little over 4,000 votes. I was somewhere around 3,800. And then Chris Robinson was somewhere in the 2,000 range.
So if it's that close, does it make sense to have an audit?
I would think so. And technically, we are going to be having an audit in Campbell County. So the state, after each election, now I don't have the exact statute right in front of me, but they choose at random about 12 counties in the whole entire state and do an audit. Actually do what you might think would be an audit. It's very minimal what they do, and it doesn't get into things that we might want to know. I've heard several different things in terms of they pull, I think it's like school board minutes and things. It's very top level there. I don't even know how that relates, but that was in the most recent legislation from what I recall. But in terms of an audit and in the way that we would think of it, kind of what I'm trying to pursue here, just because it is such a close, such a small margin between the top two candidates. So that's why I chose to pursue the actual recount. And that would actually get into looking at the actual paper ballot.
Is the recount hand counted by people?
Yeah, so there's two different things. There's what's called a recanvass, which I also did. Now, historically, from what I have heard, they would rerun the ballots through the machines and print out another little slip like they do on election night. But for the recanvass that I took part in recently, like right after the election, they simply pulled out the tapes that they had from that night and just read off of them, which, unless somebody typed it in wrong, there was pretty much no chance that it was going to be different. But this recount would actually be physically pulling out the paper ballots from the machines and inspecting them.
What about the absentee ballots?
I believe it does. It takes everything into account, and they recount everything.
So part of the voting process does not include a verification hand count of what the machines say.
Currently, well, I know with the absentee ballots, to my knowledge, they do actually have to inspect those. And then I think there's provisions. I'm clearly not a total expert on how they do all this, but I believe with like write-in candidates, they have to actually go through and look through each particular ballot that's cast.
Well, I just noticed, when I went to vote, I filled out a paper ballot and submitted into the machine, and the machine just popped up saying you voted, but it didn't print out what I voted for. And there was no verification process to show me that the ballot was counted the way I voted.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why I would just think it would be a normal step in the process that at the precinct level, they would hand count to verify the machine counts were correct.
Right. Yeah, and that's something, I mean, I am in favor of having more human interaction with, the actual counting process. Just because, I mean, we're trusting machines to do all of this, and I'm not saying there's any foul play, but we've all experienced problems with technology, and I think totally placing all of our dependence on one electronic system, is probably not the best check and balance for this kind of thing. I think people should actually be able to look at it and, like you said, be able to verify that the actual vote was counted the way you wanted it to be counted.
If you get a hand count of the ballots, is the world going to burn down?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay.
I think it's perfectly reasonable to conduct a hand count of the ballots.
So Jessica, do you have to pay for that out of your own pocket?
Yes, there is some misinformation that's going around that it would cost the taxpayers, and that is not the case. I mean, just to be frank, that's being circulated by our own Secretary of State, Mike Adams, and it's not going to cost the taxpayers a dime. It's going to come directly out of my pocket, and that's something that I'm willing to take on.
Are you allowed to share how much something like that would cost?
Yeah, well, that's kind of the point of contention right now. I have looked at, there was a previous recount in Daviess County back in 2019, and they had about a similar number of ballots that they needed to count as my district, and that cost a little over $7,000. Now, when I run the numbers myself, that's about what I came up with, and I broke it down by county, which would include Campbell, Pendleton, and Bracken counties. I didn't want to actually do Kenton County. It was such a small number of ballots that were cast in terms of like the whole. So there were a little over 17,000 ballots cast in Kenton County, and then about 72 votes that were cast for my race. So the actual physical, because they'd have to take every ballot and sort through to find those 72 ballots. So that would be a lot of expense and time to be able to do that. So I just figured, let's just start with 3 main counties. But if you take that total area, I think it's comparable to what Daviess County did in 2019. And like I said, that's the number that I'm coming up with. Now, the numbers that the state is providing is a lot more. It's, I've seen anywhere from almost 3 times as much, if not more, than my estimate of $7,000. So the next step is for that to go to the judge, and he would determine the cost that it's going to be for the bond.
That's expensive.
Yes.
Wow. So what kind of machines were actually used in the counties that you were inquiring about?
Yes. So the 3 main counties of Campbell, Pendleton, and Bracken, they all, to my knowledge, they all use the Hart voting machines. And then Kenton County uses ES&S.
Well, how many of these machines were brand new?
I know for sure that all the Campbell County ones were brand new, and they had somewhere in the neighborhood of about 37 machines for that whole county.
Well, I mean, for Michael Adams to make the accusations that he's made, you would think at the end of the day, he would say, yeah, go ahead and pay for a hand recount so that we can prove that our machines are accurate. But instead, he spun the narrative to say that the world's going to burn and we're undermining democracy, make it harder for the government to function. This is the government's function, and they need to be more transparent. So I guess it's not so much a question. I'm just confused as to the reaction of the representatives we already have in government not wanting to verify what the machines say and show us that they're secure. Like, he's not interested in proving that point.
Right. Yeah, I've honestly been kind of shocked at some of the rhetoric that's coming out. You know, I think at the end of the day, we can all agree we just want secure, free, and fair elections in this country. And for our own elected officials, like you said, to be coming out and making these accusations when, you know, I have not alleged any fraud. I just, you know, it's a close race. And I think, you know, based on the statute that I've filed under, which is KRS 120.095, there's no actual reason that you have to give to do a recount. And I would think any fair-minded Secretary of State would be happy to just make sure everything is okay. Well, he claims that, you know, they did do the checks before the election, and that's fine. He might have done those checks, but I don't know why it's such an issue to check after the election as well. You know, we have these brand new voting machines, and I'm very hopeful that, you know, they are all accurate and everything was fine, but you know, I think the people have a right just to make sure everything's good. So, yeah, I hope he will come around and get on board with us.
Well, do you think he's hiding behind that 1% margin?
I think it's definitely possible. He really, you know, at some of his statements that he's made, he's pushing for that for next year's legislative session. Currently, there's no margin that you have to be within in order to do one of these recounts, but he's hoping to push for less than 1%. Excuse me. And I don't know that we should have any certain margin. I mean, if a candidate is willing to pay for this, you know, I don't see what the problem is there. And just to bring up a relevant issue that's kind of a similar story, you know, there's a county in Georgia that just did one of these, not to go into all of it, but they were, the losing candidate was not within 1%. And they did a hand recount and the results completely changed. So I just think that completely shutting down any opportunity to do a recount based on margin is not the way we want to go.
Right. Didn't Bevin challenge Bashir's numbers?
If I recall, and then, you know, then they did end up moving on, but yeah.
Right.
Well, I would like to let Michael Adams know that he can push for whatever he wants. We're going to be pushing our Liberty candidates to make the voting process more transparent, and that hand counts are actually included in the audit process for every election. That's where I'm at with it. You want to push that, Michael? We'll push ours.
We definitely, you know, I think it's fair to say that we all want more transparency in every facet of government, and elections should be at the very top of that.
Well, I was just going to say that the education process of how the elections even work, I don't think people are aware that there isn't true verification, there isn't hand counts. Like you said, even the audit process doesn't even make sense. The general public doesn't understand that their votes might not be being counted.
I mean, I know the standard line is, you know, it is being counted. Well, I mean, and that's great. I hope it is, and I'd like to believe that. I just think that the people have a right to have some concrete way of knowing that it's being counted without just being told, it's fine, trust us, we're the experts. And I think that's the biggest thing, because people who are elected work for us. So, you know, if people have some concerns, I think they should be addressed.
Totally agree. Stacy, weren't you the one that said if they can audit our taxes, we can audit our votes?
Yeah, why don't they trust the taxes we send in on the computer programs that we use? Why do they have a physical person go through our tax returns if machines are to be trusted? I mean, I could use the same rhetoric on the stuff the government's doing to us, but apparently we have to be transparent with our government, but our government doesn't have to be transparent with us.
Right, does kind of seem like that a lot of times.
Jessica, I was reading the letter that you submitted, and it said something about the allegations weren't served, something about the proper parties weren't served.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Yeah. So what that is referring to, kind of what I've been seeing, at least from the attorney for the State Board of Elections, they are trying to place my filing to the court within the bucket of an actual contested election, which I'm not doing. So for any of the listeners, a contested election actually follows a totally different procedure within the Kentucky Revised Statutes. So it's under 120.055, I think. And that has to do with actual allegations of fraud, which I'm not making. I'm just trying to do an actual recount. So under those rules, though, you do have to serve different people. But I clearly state in my my legal documents that I was filing under 120.095, which is just a standard recount procedure. And for that, you only had to serve the State Board of Elections.
Well, I just want to thank you, Jessica. You're doing this for all of us. We all want to see more transparency. We want to know our votes count. I think you've worked really hard. You're spending a lot of your money to make them prove it, and they should prove that their machines are accurate, and they should work on securing the trust of the people they're supposed to serve. So on behalf of everyone in Kentucky, we thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to do it. And just one further step to making sure that all of our votes count, and you know, that we have the freedom that we think that we have in this country.
What attorney are you using?
I am going what's called pro se right now, which is I'm representing myself. That has been kind of an issue. I mean, just to be frank, it's not a lot of attorneys want to touch the political realm, so I just decided to do it all myself.
Oh, you are badass. I love you, Jessica.
Hey, it's been a learning curve, I'll tell you that. I'm just like pretending to be a lawyer right now.
And the more you get into it, the more you think, I'm glad I'm not an attorney.
I don't know. I mean, it's like, maybe I do. But because clearly there's a need for this. So
we need constitutional, yeah, we need constitutional attorneys out there.
Right.
Well, when you're done with this one, I have a pro se case against the schools if you're interested.
Oh, okay. Well, you never know. Maybe that'll be my new thing.
Okay.
Jessica's gonna be able to quit her day job.
Yeah. Oh no, not ready for that.
So do you need help raising funds, or do you have a place people can donate? Are we allowed to do that?
Yes. Obviously kind of the next step is Judge Zala is going to be reviewing everything. I think he has till June 29th to actually determine, because what happened was the State Board of Elections, the day of my first hearing, they filed a motion to dismiss my case. Well, the judge allowed me to rebut, and so we did that whole song and dance. And now all the paperwork is in, and the judge is going to review everything. He's going to determine by the 29th whether or not we're going to proceed with another hearing, at which point we would call a bunch of the witnesses, so to speak, or experts who can give us the actual cost estimates. And then Judge Zala would actually set the cost of the bond. So I haven't formally started fundraising, but I mean, it is something, if people are ready or willing to give at this point, they can simply go to my website, which is still up and active. And that's www.nealforky.com. And that's NEAL4FORKY.com. And that will all go toward, this whole recount. And then once we know the cost, then we'll kind of have an easier goal set in people's minds. But yeah, any help is greatly appreciated. Well, thank you all, first of all, for having me. And I just want to encourage everyone to, take an active role in what's going on around you, whether that be with election integrity, school board issues, that kind of a thing. I was just an everyday average person a year ago. And, but what's happening in our country is not okay. And it's going to take a lot of us, stepping up and getting into the ring and fighting for our values. So I would just leave the audience with that and encourage you all to do whatever you feel is good to do in your own little circle of influence. And thanks again.
Well, thanks, Jessica. You're truly an inspiration, and you've got me fired up now. Not that I wasn't ready.
Yes, thank you, Jessica. You're amazing. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for what you do.